Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of JoyBaking.com. Today we're going to make a Victoria sponge, or maybe you know it as a Victoria sandwich cake, and this is what it looks like. This is a really popular British cake named after Queen Victoria, and as you can see, it's 2 layers of this buttery, rich, moist textured cake that's traditionally filled with either a raspberry or a strawberry jam, and then if you like, which I do, you can put a layer of whipped cream as well, and then you top the cake with a dusting of powdered or caster sugar. A really delicious cake. So the first thing that you will need to do is to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius. And then you will need 2 cake pans. These are 8-inch round, 20 centimeter, and my pans are 2-inch deep, 5 centimeters. And then you can just spray the inside of the pan with one of those nonstick sprays, but I'm going to butter mine. So I just melted a little bit of butter, and then I just take a pastry brush and brush the bottom and the sides. And then to make doubly sure that my cake doesn't stick to the bottom of the pan, I'm just putting a round of parchment paper like so. I've already done this one, so that's done. So now for our cake batter, if you have a stand mixer like I have here, use your paddle attachment. You can use a hand mixer, or really you can just a large bowl with a wooden spoon. This cake, there's like a really easy formula. If you weigh your ingredients, what you do is you just weigh your eggs, whatever the weight is, then you just use an equal weight of butter, sugar, flour. Nothing much to remember there, but I'm going to give you both the cup and the gram measurements. So the first thing that you will need is 1 cup, 225 grams of butter. I'm using unsalted butter, and have your butter at room temperature. The reason I'm using unsalted is 1, I like the flavor, and 2, I like to control the salt in my cakes. But, you know, some people like to use salted butter, which is perfectly fine. And then I would just leave out the salt that's called for in the recipe. So now, what I'm going to do is just beat this on low speed just until that butter's nice and smooth. Okay. And as always, when you're making, you know, any batter really, just periodically scrape down the sides and the bottom of your bowl to make sure everything gets mixed together. Now, typically use 225 grams of butter. I would use 225 grams of sugar. I find that a little sweet, so I'm going to cut back a little on that, and I'm going to use 1 cup, which is 200 grams. Now, if you're in the UK, you would use caster sugar. In the States, that's kind of hard to find. Caster sugar is like superfine sugar. You could use superfine, or you could just use granulated white sugar for this. And put that in there. And I'm also going to flavor my cake with 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of pure vanilla extract, or I think in the UK it's essence. So now what we're going to do now is beat on medium-high speed until this mixture is really light and fluffy and it's white in color. Now, depending like on you're using a stand mixer, that would probably be, you know, 3 to 5 minutes, a little more than that with a hand mixer. And if you're doing it by hand, then a little longer than that. But just until it's really nice and light and fluffy. Okay. So, good scrape. So as you can see, it's quite light, white in color, nice and light and fluffy. Really, this is very similar to a pound cake in taste and texture, because when you make a pound cake, really, if traditionally A pound cake meant a pound of butter, sugar, eggs, and flour. Same kind of thing as this, equal weights. So now we are going to add 4 large eggs, which is about 220 grams of eggs. Have your eggs at room temperature. I'm going to add 1 egg at a time, beat that in, and carry on to all of them. So I just finished adding my 2nd egg. Now, one little trick I read, I have a lot of British baking books, and what's interesting with the Victoria sponge, almost every book had exactly the same recipe, and they all give this little tip. You know, when you have a lot of butter and then you add a lot of eggs, your batter, when you start adding your eggs, can curdle. So what they all say is to take a little bit of your flour, just a spoonful, and add it in, and that helps prevent that curdling. I wouldn't worry that much about that because once we add all the flour, that'll smooth out our batter, but that's just, you know, a little tip you might want to try. So I'm going to add my 3rd egg and then my 4th. Okay, so now for our dry ingredients in a separate bowl, I have 1 3/4 cups, which is, again, 225 grams, so we're about the same weight. Now, I did, when I remember I took that tablespoon and put it in, I did take it out of my flour that I had already measured out. And then to that, now, in the UK, they tend to use self-raising flour, so you would use that 1 3/4 cups, 225 grams. But self-raising flour already has the baking powder and the salt in it, so if you're using that, then you would just leave out. In the States, we don't use self-rising flour very much, so I'm just using 1 3/4 cups of all-purpose flour, plain flour. So I am adding 2 teaspoons, 8 grams of baking powder. Just, you know, to clarify that. And a 1/2 teaspoon, 2 grams of kosher salt. And I'm just whisking. You could sift this together, but I'm just going to whisk. Let's get some air in there and mix that baking powder and salt. So now I'm going to add this in. And we only want to mix on slow speed. You don't want that flour coming up. I do have 2 tablespoons, 20 grams of milk. I will add that in a bit. So I have it almost mixed in, so I'm going to add my milk. Have your milk at room temperature. Some people don't add a little milk. I find that this batter is, you know, you got a lot of butter and eggs in that, so it makes a very thick batter. I want to just thin it out just a little with that milk. So I'm just going to beat this in till it's all mixed together. Okay, and we are done. It's not a hard cake. Like I said, the formula is really easy to remember. It's really easy to make, and it tastes fantastic. So now we are going to divide it between our 2 pans. If you have a scale, which of course I do recommend, you will put 440 grams in each pan. If you don't, you'll have to just, you know, eyeball it. Okay, so I have a little flour on the side. I'm just gonna make sure it's all mixed in. So there you have it. Wonderful batter. So now, like I said, 440 grams per pan. Make sure you zero your scale before you start adding. And you can just use the back of a spoon or an offset spatula. We're just going to spread this out evenly. Now, for baking, everyone's oven is a little different, as I always say, but I'm going to say about 20 minutes. So the cakes will rise, they'll turn a nice golden brown. Of course, a toothpick inserted in the center will come out clean. If you press the center, it bounces back. And you will also notice that the cake starts to just barely start shrinking from the sides of the pan. So that's when you know it's done. So like I said, about 20 minutes. Always check in case your oven is running a little hot. You know, check it maybe 17, 18 minutes just to double check. You don't want to overbake and then your cakes are dry. I do like to rotate my cake pans front to back for even baking about halfway through. So 20 minutes. Okay, so our cakes are done. So put your pans on a wire rack. As you can see, nice golden brown, rose a bit. Toothpick inserted into the center, came out clean, and then you can just start to see them pulling away from the sides of the pan. So now, we're going to let them cool maybe about 15 minutes, and then when we come back, we'll take them out of the pans. So now, to take the cakes from the pan, just take a flat edge. I'm using an offset spatula, knife, bring it around the inside just in case. Don't want it sticking. And then take your wire rack, put it top, and then flip that off. And then peel off the parchment. I am going to leave them just like this because when I stack the cakes, I want a flat top. So I'm actually going to stack them like the top of the cake upside down. So I'm going to leave them like that. We want to let them cool completely, and then we'll fill them with the jam and the whipped cream. So now we are ready to put our cake together. So you need a serving platter. And take one layer, and as you can see, I have the bottom of the cake facing up because I want that nice flat to put my jam and my cream on. So you will need 1/4 cup, which is about 75 grams of your favorite jam. Traditionally, I think it's either a strawberry or a raspberry jam, but really, whatever your favorite jam is. And I like raspberry because it's a little more tart. And then you have the sweet cake, and then jam is sweet. So I prefer the raspberry. And you can use, mine has seeds in it. You can buy seedless as well. And just give it a good stir. And put it over the top. Now I'm using 1/4 cup, about 75 grams. You want more jam? You want less jam? Up to you. And of course, if you have a homemade jam, that would be the best to use. And then back of the spoon, or I'm using an offset spatula, just spread that out. As you can see, I just want a very thin layer. So if you want a thicker layer, then use a little more. Okay, that looks good. Jam to the edge. Now, a lot of recipes, that's it. And then you would just put the top layer on top. But to me, whipped cream is my favorite. goes with cake. So what I have in a bowl here is 3/4 of a cup, which is 180 milliliters, 180 grams of cold, heavy whipping cream or heavy cream. And that's cream with a 35 to 40% butterfat content. And what that means is when I whip it, it will hold stiff peaks. I'm doing it by hand. Give my arm a little exercise. You could, if your stand mixer, and just use a whisk attachment, or a hand mixer, or your stand mixer with the whisk attachment. But I'm going to do it by hand. Okay, my arm is tired and stiff peaks there. So we are ready. Spread that on top. I didn't add any sugar in my cream. You could, but you know, I find the cake is quite sweet, the jam is quite sweet, so I don't want any sugar. But you could, if you want. I'll leave that up to you. So again, offset spatula, back of a spoon, just level that off. If you didn't want this much cream, you could use less, or if you want more. Can you ever have too much cream? I don't know. Okay, and then, now if you want a flat top, you could do it, you know, bottom side up. I like the look of the top of the cake, so I'm going to do it this way. And then it kind of looks like a sandwich, doesn't it? Hence the name. So there we have it. Boy, it looks nice. And then sprinkle the top. I'm using powdered sugar. You could use castor sugar, super fine sugar. But I kind of like the look of the powdered sugar. So there we have it, Victoria Sponge, Victoria Sandwich Cake. I think it's a really nice looking cake. Okay, so let's cut a slice. Now, if you just put the jam in there, you could store this at room temperature if you didn't put the cream. But since we have the cream, you will, if you don't eat it all on the first day, you will have to put it into the refrigerator to store it. I like to wipe my knife off with each cut. A nice big slice. And there we, oh, now that's a cake. That's a really nice looking cake. Let's try some. Go straight down the front there. Get a little jam, cream, cake. It is moist. It is tender. You got a little bit of vanilla flavor. It's a really nice. No, nice is the word. Delicious cake. And then the jam goes really nice with the cake and the whipped cream. I mean, kind of like for Americans, think of it as like, you could have it like strawberry shortcake. Actually, with this cake, the jam I love. You could use, if you didn't want to use jam, like in the summer, you could use this to make like a strawberry shortcake. Cut up some strawberries, some other type of berries. Lemon curd would be excellent between the layers. Nutella, you know, it goes on and on because it's such a good tasting, nice textured cake. You could really do a lot with it. I like the cream, I must admit. I think it kind of just balances everything together. But anyways, it's like I said, if you don't put the cream, you could store this at room temperature, probably 4 to 5 days, if it lasts that long. With the cream, you have to put it in the fridge. if I don't mind it cold, but then I don't mind cake cold. If not, you can just bring it out and let it come up to room temperature before serving. So anyways, you must try this Victoria sponge cake. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com.